Je pense donc oui, or as it is more popularly known, Cogito Ergo Sum, is quite possibly the most quoted, most reiterated phrase bandied about the halls of philosophical discourse. From the cold crucible of metaphysics to the physical formulations of this greatest of all possible worlds, it affirms itself with nothing short of epistemic certainty. The I is the foundation to all reason and proof unequivocal of, at very least, one undeniable, incontestable truth. Proof of existence. An inadvertent proclamation of unintended majesty, a proclamation of majesty all the same. I think, therefore I am, is the foremost foundational premise of certainty. Nietzsche attacked it, yes, but Nietzsche attacks everything. It is the philosopher's mallet entire modus operandi. He deems its I a linguistic fiction and grammatical convenience, says it's lacking in physical substance. Kierkegaard interprets I think, therefore I am as I exist because I think, which reduces existence to cognition. Kierkegaard says that existence cannot be defined in a mere moment of rational clarity. Both philosophers have their points, but fail to see the dictum's deeper importance despite its monumental assessment, as apparently little more than the discrediting of Descartes was ever on their respective agendas, both dispensing with our father of modern philosophy for different self-serving reasons. Whereas for myself, it is from the sole reason of self-service that I pondered the maxim beyond its linguistic faults and beyond its untenable, ephemeral lucidity, and beheld in the eternal here and now, ere so poetically perfect, the brilliance of its declaration. René Descartes was a French philosopher and mathematician who, in an heroic act of philosophical self-examining, set out to question every single one of his beliefs in order to create a proper foundation for knowledge, stripping each illusory pretense to grounded, factual truth. He contested that every single one of our beliefs, no matter how seemingly obvious and right, can be doubted, can all be doubted. And inasmuch as the burden of proof lies on the shoulders of their claimants, naught but the outright unfalsifiable and readily verifiable would be given passage. Not a single thought, whether freshly contrived or those of generational acculturation, will go untested. Nothing shall be spared the skeptic's blade. Nothing shall be spared the skeptic's blade. What great spleen is shown here in this display of disciplined unbias by Descartes. To rely and proceed on one's deductions sans the influence of anything but seemingly that of his senses. But nay, says Descartes, we must venture even further in our rigor. He set out to challenge the presumptions of the physical senses, noting the numerous examples when any one of our senses had miscategorized the object of its evaluation, like that time you saw or heard or smelled or tasted and or touched something you thought was, but actually was not. Our human fallibility is illustrating the error of upholding ourselves as sole recourse to knowledge, thereby declaring all sensory data unusable. Within this methodological skepticism, all sense authority is outrightly dispensed with. All layers, skin to the bone and beyond. Skin to the bone and beyond, until but one thing remains. One truth, the ultimate truth. Not some dogmatic truth, not some cultural truth. Things all manufactured by collective idealism, ideologies themselves, and little more. Or traditional truth, etc., but rather as the most fundamental, foundational first truth, that which precedes them all, the self, or the experiencer that precedes experience. The traditional monotheist religionist believer erroneously declaims that being is bestowed upon by God, our Cartesian deductions revealing through action of will and not belief that there is asserted thought which is itself self-fashioning, elevating a metaphysical/epistemic certainty to automatic self-deification. Epistemology is knowledge theory, entailing a methodology that separates the chaff of opinion from the wheat of truth. Ontology is a subset of metaphysics which precedes epistemology and which deals with the nature of being. In his Cogito, Descartes was cautious to not dethrone God and cast him alongside the hypothetical baby with the bathwater. Descartes, on paper, was himself a devout Christian, as would be anyone, myself included, considering their penchant for burning dissenters alive. And they're supposed to be the good guys. Descartes, rather, was hoping to rebuild the edifice of metaphysics in God's loathed Christian name. The I-Theist takes a far less self-debasing approach, opting to construct of said ruins something of actual use, the foundation for an epistemology of an applicable philosophy of self, the I, the central axis mundi, ordained and made not of divine craftsmanship, but of sovereign interiority. In I-Theism, the sum in Cogito Ergo sum is no linguistic accident to compromise some thought of some self, but an ontological declaration of the self. Cogito and Herrenmoral. Nietzsche could never accept this cogito on the grounds of its rationalism, save within the context of Herrenmoral, where its very premise may serve as a blade to sever the tethers from you and herd. Sever the tethers that bind you to the herd. For the master consciousness, to think is to command, manifest in vision, in mind. I think therefore equals command. I am is the declaration of self that justifies the self, itself a justification. Thinking is the act of power evincing existence. To think is to experience, to act is to experience. Therefore, cogito ergo sum becomes I experience, therefore I am. Thinking, a mere subset of experience, could be replaced with any verb in its stead. The conclusion would remain the same regardless of how it is phrased. For it is not the think that is the core of the statement, but rather the I, the self, the experiencer that precedes experience. This is the fundamental principle of our epistemology, the veritable tarmac from where our crafts take flight. That is Herrenmoral, I-Theism in philosophy, with your host, Reverend Count MoriVond.